Okay, so here we are. We made it safe and sound at John Summerhill's Forge. We're right outside of Detroit. And you hear John at work. Okay, everybody, we're in the forge with John, and we're just going to ask him a couple questions, and so you got to get to know him a little bit better. And so, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a retired educator. Picked up the hobby of knife making a few years back, maybe 6 or 7, and retired and began knife making full time.
Okay.
Ever since, and I'm happy.
What is your most rewarding thing out of doing this bladesmithing?
I think the thing that I like is that I look at this as being an artist. So it's, at the end of the day, you can see progress fairly quickly. And, it's all about growth for me. So I feel like that journey is never ending. It's always going to be out in front of you, and you're chasing the next level. And so it's just an art form. I'm happy to make something that will outlast me for hundreds of years if it's taken care of properly. And in addition to being an art, it's also functional. And so it's a tool. And so I really, really enjoy that.
So what, doing this whole process, and I've seen some of your work, it's beautiful. What was the hardest thing for you, thing to grasp? Not really master, but grasp.
I think the hardest technical thing to do, there's a fit up is tough, putting guards and making sure there's no gaps and making it look like one piece. Grinding is a skill. And some of these things look easy to do, but when you do them, you find out that it's way more difficult. And so there's a persistence you have to be on fire a little bit to do this, to keep you going, because you'll have a lot of times where you're not doing well. But every day you chip away at it and you get a little bit better day after day until all of a sudden you've done something that you've never done, or you're like, this is the best knife I've ever made, So, those are the things that I kind of look for as I come out here every day, is to be a good creator, do the best I can, and maybe make gains eventually through time.
So what made you start doing bladesmith? Because you said you were in education, you're an administrator.
It was probably 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and I was sitting on the couch turning channels and came across the History Channel Forged in Fire and was like, what are these people doing? And I just kind of caught the bug and was like, I have got to try this. And so I went out and had my Weber grill, put some charcoal in it, and I took a leaf blower, and I got some steel from Lowe's or Home Depot, which was mild steel, it wasn't hardenable. Yeah. And I just started hammering on whatever I could and heating things up, and all of a sudden I was off and running, and I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And so Forged in Fire is the source of my beginning,
And you were on Forged in Fire, and you won.
Yes, I've been on twice. I was fortunate enough to win my first show. Great experience, great show, great people on the show. And then they asked me back for like a Champions Edition. I beat the judges, and I made it to a judge and unfortunately lost, but again, had a wonderful experience doing that. So I'm really, really proud of the fact that I started from zero and relatively pretty quickly made it to that show and was able to stand next to those people. Some of them are outstanding knife makers, so I was happy to be a part of that.
So did that really help you in your business growth really quick overnight, like success?
Yeah, if you go on Forged in Fire and you're lucky enough to win the show, when that show airs, your 15 minutes of fame starts, and it's kind of going to be like a boost in 10 years experience, and people are going to start buying your stuff. So if you're able to take advantage of that and continue to get better, you're diving into the world of knife making, and you can make something happen with it. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do that, and then go on a second time and have another round of 15 minutes of fame. So that was a great experience.
And you went up against other winners to be able to go against a judge, didn't you?
Yeah, that was tough. Those were some good knife makers. When I finally got to see them, I was pretty nervous, like, oh no, here we go. But kept a cool head, focused on what I had to do. And again, some good things happened, a little bit of luck here and there. And I was fortunate enough to get through that final round.
Got her done.
Yeah. Good experience.
So we got, viewers from all, skill levels and everything. Mm-hmm. What would you, like the biggest bit of advice would you give like a guy wanting to get into this, or maybe they're starting out?
I would say start out small. I'm really, really grateful for doing things in the most basic way, because I feel like it built a foundation for me to like what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And then as time went by and I was able to purchase a newer piece of equipment or a used piece of equipment or make something to help me along the way, that foundation just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And so, I'm glad I wasn't somebody that was able to go out and buy a brand new press and a brand new grinder and then try and start doing this, because you just don't know. So when you start doing things on the most basic elemental level, and you're loving it, you will work to get better. Your skills will improve. And again, it becomes about that artwork that's in the knife. And sometimes the tools do matter. And so when you build a foundation to grind, for example, on a real old broken down grinder, or use an angle grinder to put your bevels in, when you get the opportunity to get a 2x72 grinder and really lay in some nice bevels, it's exciting, because you shoot up your competency immediately. Mm-hmm. And again, it keeps that fire going. And so, but that foundation, again, I often think back, I had a coal forge. I was doing things just by hand. I didn't have a power hammer or a hydraulic press, didn't have a real good grinder. And it was a struggle, but I just fell in love with that. And so that, for a beginner, I would say, start basic, do little things. There's a lot of good people out there that are willing to talk to you, and you can seek them out. In today's world, through the internet, through Facebook, through social media, you can connect with these people and talk to them and find out. YouTube, I still to this day watch a lot of videos on what people are doing. It's inspiring to see. It's also it also drives me in a challenge. I want to be like that. You want to do those things, and so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can watch what others do and then try to emulate that, and that will help you. Okay. Yeah.
So John does customized classes. So if anybody's interested, how would they get a hold of you?
You can go to my website, BigDaddy'sHammerworks.com. You can find my contacts there. You can go, I post on social media, Instagram, Facebook, a little bit of TikTok here and there if I get inspired to make a little video. But it's easy to find me and then get my number or send me a message through my email off my website and ask questions. And usually I connect on the phone with people to really get the ball moving.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
All right.
Straight up. Just like that. And then just go a little bit, you're gonna flip it and do the other side. Nice. No. Go right to the door. Oh, okay. And then you'll flip it. Same thing. going, and then we're gonna, once we get this corner to meet and we're happy with it, then we're squeezing it down this way.
Okay.
So having that flat stay there might be a good thing, because we'll just have to push it down and it'll re-square itself a little bit. We'll maintain the C's. You can see the C's on it, right?
Yeah, it's an energy now. Yeah.
So we're looking good. The thing that I find when I was trying to do mosaic or to get these W's is I forget which way I've got the billet. It's like, which, am I here or am I here? So early on, those little, seems like mistakes that you wouldn't make, I was making them. And so, now luckily you can see where the steel is layered on most of the time. But when you're doing like a mosaic billet, and you've done this, and then you've made your W's, you restacked it once, maybe twice, then you've re-cornered it right there. That one is where it's easy to like lose which corner had the thick steel that I'm trying to make the starburst pattern out of. But if you don't get that right, you can squeeze it, and then when you cut it up and etch it to look at it, you go, oh fuck, you didn't do it right. So little things that my little checklist of stupidity that I seem to really get right all the time. fucking things up.
Oh, I've done that before too. Like, how did I manage to do that?
Right, yeah. But that's part of the, again, I go back to, if you get it the first time, then you're doing something that's not very valuable, because it's not hard to do. So making those mistakes, that stays with you, especially if you're spending money on it. You're one of two things. You're going to forget it and say, I don't want to do this, or you're going to be like, I won't make that mistake again, and you've learned a lesson. And, so that to me is always good. I never worry about that.
Yeah, I heard one knife maker say, like, the finished knife is actually 10,000 mistakes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was like, something's burning over there.
Yeah, I was like, I smell burning rubber. I better check this out.
Alright. I think we're okay. I want to leave those. We'll clean some things up. We'll see how long they are.
Smooth.
We got to straighten it out, so I'm just gonna get it straight. We're at 18 inches. So that's 3 and some odd number. Let's do this.
I was worried about hitting your gas line.
Oh, yeah.
I've done that before.
I don't want to do that, that's for sure. Let's do this. What do we have? 18? Did I say 18? Do some math. I was an English teacher, so I don't trust my math.
I do the same thing.
3.6. So it's just over half. 3.5. So I think that's one.
I do that too.
I want to get it over. I want to get it over 20 inches, and that'll be the way to do it. And then I may go to 1.65, 1.6. again, these numbers are always bigger. When it says 1.75, it's not.
Okay.
1.85. So it's always a little bit bigger.
The lease is
I can
uniform.
change that. I think I can go to settings. Top, I don't even know what that means. Press direction. Top acting, I don't even know what that means. I thought it was set at a tenth of an inch. That was 1,000th of an inch, so I don't know. Position. Alright, so you're going to do this one with this way through the flaps.
Okay. Up and down.
Yeah, and then we'll switch it and then we'll run it through. And again, you'll just do 3/4 of it, and then we should be in a spot where I'm kind of splitting hairs here, but I want to get the length. I want 5 inches. If you make them too short and then stack them, you're always going to have some D-lands on the ends. So I'd rather have a little bit longer and try to minimize that. Well, we'll be using flux on this next round. We're going to cut some of that off, but not all of it. So I want to make sure that we're in a, give it a second. I want to make sure we get as much steel out of this as we can.
Yeah, I think you said, one time I called you, you said there's a lot of sacrificial with.
You cut and grind it and square up. Shit, guys put this shit on the surface grinder, make it perfectly square, and then so that just minimizes the board well. But you're always going to get D-lands on the ends and sides. And this is the way it is. Now this has got the sides here are like this, so there shouldn't be any. Now it's just going to be on the ends, really. And that's what we got on that one. It just starts splitting apart. But think of it. You went from this to this. Those ends are just gonna. They were already from being squeezed. Still gonna be some D-lands. You know, when you squeeze the steel, you're rolling a little bit. There's always a little bit. So, but again, you want to get as much out of it as you can. Some guys will make a huge build. They'll make a double billet, and then then they don't have to really worry about it. But they can make 4 or 5 knives. They can have a good bandsaw horizontal where they cut slices off.
I've seen that.
So they get like 4 billets that are this big, which is,
Where do you get a bandsaw like that? Because mine was just.
it's the settings of the bandsaw that are off. I had a little bit of that problem, and I watched a couple videos on how to kind of do it, but it was on a different model, and I was like, the one problem that I had is you have to weld. You've got it in well, I was cutting tiles, so you had to put it in on an angle, so it was coming down like this, and then you wanted to cut straight, but as you got toward the end, you needed to have something welded to the end so you could push it out far enough to get to that last tile into. And that's where I was like, nah, get it. The shop that I'm in, they've got all that. So they've got, huge lathes, huge wrench work mills, a bandsaw that, the blade's probably 14 feet. It's massive. They've got a really nice horizontal saw. So this billet right here, I cut there. Okay. Yeah, so. But, you're going to spend, that's all hooked up to 3-phase. It's, you got to have a full barn, 40 by 80, that shit in. But you can buy that stuff pretty cheap. For knife making, that setup right there will get it done. It's just a matter of, do you know how to use it? I just figured out something the other day with that one, where there's a lot of slop in it. Well, I just discovered there are set screws that you can tighten up, and it tightens everything up. And I was like, holy shit. So you can do some things on different angles. There was a guy at work that was doing the lathe, and that lathe had screws in it, and he had something in there, and it wasn't perfectly set, and he started moving the screws. And I'm I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm lining this up. And then he had like a micrometer ball, and he got it perfect. And that was allowed for adjustments. Now this one, it doesn't have that. You'd have to put it in and then adjust it, but you know, it is. But this thing was sloppy. So this thing moves. See, it doesn't move anymore. So when this gets mounted, when you put that on, I was locking it, shutting this, and then what this will allow me to do is I can loosen this and turn it, and then move this forward and cut things on an angle perfectly. So if it's not just straight this way, I can go on another axis and do some things. So I was like, oh, so that's when I was starting to mess with some of these set screws, and it tightened it up so that I could back this out and then turn this on an angle, and I could cut this way, and then when I wanted to cut in, I could just do this. And if this were turned, it would cut in like that. So, because there are times when I'm doing a pommel that I want to get a shape or go to a cone, a cone, and I'm like, well, how do I get a real nice one? And I work it out. I'm just doing it by hand, and I'm using burrs and whatever. But it would just be a tenth of the time if you know how to use the tools right. That's one thing I've liked about having to go back and work a little bit is that, I'm picking up the skills there.
Well, that's a big learning curve on this.
Yes.
That's almost intimidating.
Yeah, it was. And I break carbide bits all the time, which pissed me off because little ones are $10 fucking a piece. So I go through them like fucking candy. All right, let's do it.
Okay. And up and down.
Oh yeah, let's do that, and then I'll hit the button and you go to the flats. It's gonna squeeze the shit out of it.
But the flats are going to be on the folder.
Yes. Throw it back in. We'll straighten it out later. Let me move the back end of this. Yeah, that's going to be plenty long enough.
Oh, sorry.
Try.
That was enough to make a katana right there.
All right. It's looking good.
That's a nice looking billet.
State going to be good next year?
I don't know.
Football team? Did they lose a lot of guys?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, they lost a clip, but they do have Caleb Downs coming back and that stud wide receiver, Smith.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
a freshman.
Is he really?
He's a freshman. They said he could go to the pros as a freshman.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if they can buy a quarterback this year. That Howard was pretty good.
Yeah.
Michigan State start to be a contender again.
Well, I think they're going to. They got a pretty good coach, but they got this quarterback. I forgot what his name is, but he either he'll do a really good thing, you know, it looks great, but then he'll come out and throw an interception to nobody around but the defender. And it's like, come on, dude, you can't. So I don't know. Luke, my son, thinks he's got like a year. I think he's a junior. He'll be a junior. I think that he's got to turn it up. I mean, otherwise you're just dead in the water. You know, it doesn't matter. But I think that coach who came from like Oregon or someplace, they got a really good coach.
Okay.
No, maybe it was Washington, or Washington State. They got one of those coaches from the West Coast there.
Yeah, because the Washington coach, I think he took the Bama job, didn't he?
Oh yeah. That's
it's hard to keep track of.
Yeah, I know. All right, let's do this.
I'll tell you, he surprised me, USC.
USC?
God, they suck.
Again, I like what they did with the playoff, but it exposes how many of those teams in the past would have never been national champions had they let more teams in.
Yeah.
So all these lines, these are the end of the edges of the billet, and they're all G-lines, you know?
Yeah.
So you got to get all that out, or you're just going to build that into the knife.
Yeah, I'm tired of
fighting stupid stuff.
Okay. I'll tell you, I think our billet is welded.
Now, are you going to straighten anything on the sides, or do you want to leave that the way
I
it
am
is?
going to put it in
Will
there.
you?
We're going to straighten it just a little bit this way and this way. But I'm going to squeeze it down just a hair more. We're going to do it with the ruler.
And I'm not trying to challenge you. It's
No, it's good. No, ask those questions.
Okay.
And you know, I'm not the end all be all.
Well, you know more than I do.
So that's at little 6 1/8 right now.
Okay.
So we're not going to go down any too much more. I think we've got a pretty good weld, but we are going to flatten it now.
Now, you're not really you're just kind of setting your welds when you do that. Is that what you're doing, or are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Just making sure it's welded.
You're not going balls to the wall.
No.
Smash.
No, little tiny bites.
Okay. Well, that's about all my 12-ton could do anyway.
Yeah. Go. Barely fits. That's looking pretty good.
Yeah, it looks pretty nice and clean too.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, we're back at the home shop back here in Ohio now. Before I wrap things up, I want to just share with you this. This is the billet John and I made at his forge. And we just did a test etch on it. But you can definitely see the pattern there. And this thing's pretty thick right now. So what my next step is going to be, I'm going to get this on the surface grinder, clean it up, try to get some of these out. I'm sure they don't go all the way, but get a nice billet. Maybe try to widen it out a little bit with some fullering dies. But I'm not going to draw it out too much because I don't want to distort this pattern. But it's a beautiful piece, and I will be posting more videos once we really start to decide what we want to do with this, what kind of knife design we want. So we're going to wrap that up. Just remember to like, share, subscribe. Helps us grow the channel. And stay sharp, everybody.